Part 1, The Bridge of the Earth warship Valiant was quiet that morning. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars pass by on the main screen. His crew worked at their stations, checking systems and monitoring space around them. They had been on patrol for 3 weeks now, moving along the edge of human territory. Nothing exciting had happened. Just empty space and distant stars. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in the fleet for 15 years. He had seen combat before, fought pirates and raiders in the outer systems, but things had been peaceful lately. Maybe too peaceful. Lieutenant Lisa Grant sat at the communications station. She was young, only 26, with blonde hair tied back in a tight bun. She wore the standard blue uniform of the Earth Fleet. Her fingers moved across her console, checking signals and messages from nearby systems. Suddenly, she sat up straight. Her eyes went wide as she pressed her headset closer to her ear. "Captain," she said. Her voice was tight. "I'm picking up a distress signal." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. The other crew members looked up from their work. The bridge became very quiet. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. "The Kelrath system," Lisa said. "About 40 light years from here. The signal is weak, but it's definitely a distress call." Jake knew about the Kelrath. They were a peaceful species. Small, gentle beings who loved art and music. Humans had met them 3 years ago. They had no weapons, no armies. They believed in peace and harmony with all living things. "Let me hear it," Jake said. Lisa pressed a button. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice came through. It was shaking, full of fear. The voice spoke in Galactic Common, the language most species used to talk to each other. "This is Elder Marinth of Kelrath Prime. We are under attack. The Zarnoth Dominion is here. They have destroyed our defenses. They are taking our people, loading them onto ships. Please, anyone who hears this, we need help. Our children are being taken. Our cities are burning. Please, The signal cut off. Only static remained. Jake felt his jaw tighten. His hands formed into fists. The Zarnoth Dominion. He knew that name. Everyone in the fleet knew it. They were slavers and conquerors. They believed other species were nothing but tools to be used. They had conquered dozens of worlds, taking millions of beings as slaves. The Galactic Council had done nothing. They issued warnings and wrote documents, but they were too afraid to actually fight the Zarnoth. The Dominion was too powerful, too dangerous, but Jake did not care about politics or power. He cared about the fact that innocent people were being taken, hurt, killed. The Kelrath had asked for help. That was enough. "Ryan," Jake said, turning to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster looked up. He was a stocky man with red hair and freckles. He had been with Jake for 5 years. He was good at his job. "Show me what we know about the Zarnoth presence in that system," Jake ordered. Ryan's fingers flew across his console. A holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed the Kelrath system. Around the planet were dozens of red dots. Each dot was a Zarnoth warship. "Sir, intelligence reports say the Zarnoth have over 200 ships in that sector," Ryan said carefully. "If they've committed a full battle group to the Kelrath system, we could be looking at 60 or 70 warships. Maybe more." "And we're one ship," Jake said. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied. The bridge was silent. Every crew member was looking at Jake now, waiting to see what he would do. They all knew the odds. One ship against an entire fleet. It was suicide. Jake thought about the voice on the transmission, the fear in it, the desperation. He thought about the Kelrath children being loaded onto ships, probably crying for their parents. He thought about what it meant to be human. Earth was not an easy world. It had harsh weather, dangerous animals, and diseases that killed millions throughout history. Humans had survived because they were stubborn. They did not give up. They helped each other. They stood up against bullies and tyrants even when the odds were bad. That was what it meant to come from a death world. "You did not run from danger. You faced it. Set course for the Kelrath system," Jake said. His voice was calm and clear. "Maximum speed. And send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them we're going to war." Lisa's fingers were already moving across her console. "Yes, sir." "Sending the message now," Ryan hesitated. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Go ahead," Jake said. "We'll be going in alone," Ryan said. "Reinforcements will take hours to arrive. Maybe longer. The Zarnoth will have us completely outnumbered. Our shields won't hold for long against that kind of firepower." Jake nodded. You're right. This is dangerous. Maybe the most dangerous thing we've ever done. But those people down there need help right now. Not in a few hours. Not tomorrow. Right now. And we're the only ones close enough to do anything about it. He turned to face his entire crew. They were all watching him. Some looked scared. Others looked determined. But none looked like they wanted to run away. I won't order you to do this, Jake said. This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to can take a shuttle and head back to the nearest station. I'll note in my log that you had my permission. No one will think less of you. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. After a long moment, Lisa smiled. With all respect, sir, shut up and let's go save those people. The rest of the crew laughed. The tension broke like glass shattering. You heard her, Jake said, sitting back down in his command chair. Take us in, full speed. Charge all weapons. Raise shields. And someone wake up the Marines. I have a feeling we're going to need them. The Valiant's engines roared to life. The ship turned and shot forward, moving faster and faster as it entered jump drive. The stars stretched into lines of light. Jake sat in his chair and thought about what was coming. One human ship against an empire. Maybe they would die. Probably they would die. But the Kelrath would know that someone came. Someone heard their call and answered. That had to mean something. That had to matter. The Valiant raced through space toward the Kelrath system. Toward battle. Toward whatever fate had waiting for them. And on the bridge, not one member of the crew regretted the decision. Part 2. The Valiant dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Kelrath system. What Jake saw on the main screen made his blood run cold. The planet below was beautiful. Blue and green, covered with forests and oceans. But around it, like vultures circling prey, were the Zarnoth ships. Dark and angular, they looked like knives floating in space. Their hulls were black metal covered with weapons. Count them, Jake ordered. Ryan worked his console quickly. 68 ships, sir. Destroyers, cruisers, and at least 3 carriers. They have the planet completely surrounded. Life signs? Jake asked. Lisa checked her sensors. Reading thousands on the surface. They're grouped together in specific locations. Looks like the Zarnoth have herded them into collection points. Jake felt sick. Collection points. They were sorting the Kelrath like animals, deciding which ones to take as slaves and which ones to kill. Captain, they've spotted us, Ryan said. 12 ships breaking formation. Moving to intercept. On the screen, a group of Zarnoth vessels turned toward the Valiant. They were destroyers, each one larger than Jake's ship. Together, they had enough firepower to turn the Valiant into dust. All hands, battle stations. Jake announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is not a drill. We are going into combat. Fight hard, fight smart, and remember why we're here. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their positions. In the hangar bay, Marines checked their weapons and armor. In engineering, Chief Kevin Barnes pushed the reactors to maximum power. Every person on the Valiant knew what was coming. Danny, Jake said to his pilot, show them what a Deathworlder can do. Lieutenant Danny Cooper grinned. He was a thin man with quick hands and quicker reflexes. He had been flying since he was 16. Nobody in the fleet was better. Yes, sir, Danny said. His hands moved across the flight controls. The Valiant shot forward. The Zarnoth ships opened fire. Beams of energy and missiles filled the space between them. Danny twisted the ship, rolling left, then diving down. The weapons fire passed harmlessly by, missing by meters. Humans had an advantage that most species did not understand. Earth had strong gravity, higher than most inhabited worlds. Growing up in that gravity made human bodies denser, stronger. It meant humans could handle forces that would kill other species. When Danny put the Valiant into a hard turn, the crew felt the pressure. It was uncomfortable. Some people grunted with the strain. But nobody passed out. Nobody died. Any other species would have been crushed. Target their lead ship, Jake ordered. Railguns fire when ready. Ryan locked onto the nearest Zarnoth destroyer. Target locked, firing. The Valiant shook as its railguns fired. These weapons used magnetic force to shoot metal slugs at incredible speed. The slugs weighed only a few kilograms, but they hit with the force of a bomb. 3 slugs hit the Zarnoth destroyer in rapid succession. The first cracked its shields. The second punched through its armor. The third went straight through the ship and out the other side, tearing through vital systems. The destroyer exploded. A ball of fire and metal bloomed in space, then faded to nothing. Direct hit, Ryan called out. Target destroyed. Next target, Jake said calmly. Two more Zarnoth ships came at them from different angles. They were trying to trap the Valiant between them, hit it with crossfire. It was a good tactic, but Danny was better. He spun the ship, putting it into a spiral that made the artificial gravity flicker. The Zarnoth ships fired, but their shots hit each other instead of the Valiant. One destroyer's shields collapsed from friendly fire. "Missile launch," Ryan said. Pattern Sierra. Hatches opened on the Valiant's hull. 6 missiles shot out, small rockets with nuclear warheads. They spread out, each one targeting a different enemy ship. The Zarnoth point defense systems tried to shoot down the missiles. They got 3 of them. But 3 made it through. 2 explosions lit up space. 2 Zarnoth destroyers vanished, turned to atoms by the nuclear blasts. On the Zarnoth flagship, Commander Zethrak watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. In less than 5 minutes, this single unknown ship had destroyed 3 of his vessels and damaged 2 more. "What is this species?" he demanded. His sensor officer checked the readings. "The ship identifies as human, Commander, but we have no records of this species in our database." "I don't care what they call themselves," Zethrak snarled. "Send 20 more ships. Destroy them. Now." 20 Zarnoth warships turned toward the Valiant. The space around them filled with weapons fire. It was a wall of energy and metal, impossible to dodge. "Shields at 40%, Ryan reported. "We can't take much more of this." Jake watched the tactical display. 20 ships. The Valiant had already accomplished more than anyone had a right to expect. They had proven that humans would fight for the innocent. Maybe that was enough. Then Lisa spoke up. "Captain, incoming transmission from Fleet Command. Admiral Patricia Hayes is coming with the 2nd Fleet. ETA 38 minutes. Jake felt hope surge in his chest. 38 minutes. They just had to survive for 38 minutes. "You hear that, crew?" Jake said over the intercom. "The cavalry is coming. We just need to keep these bastards busy a little longer." "Danny, evasive pattern Alpha. Ryan, focus fire on their weapon systems. Let's take away their teeth." The Valiant danced through space, dodging and weaving between enemy ships. It was like watching a shark swim through a school of fish. The Zarnoth ships were bigger, more powerful. But the Valiant was faster, smarter. Every time the Zarnoth thought they had it cornered, Danny found a way out. Every time they concentrated their fire, Jake found a weak point to exploit. The Valiant's railguns never stopped firing. Enemy ships lost weapons, engines, shield generators. The minutes crawled by. The Valiant took damage. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Shield generators running at 60%. Crew members were injured, but nobody gave up. Nobody stopped fighting. Jake checked the chronometer. 37 minutes had passed. "Lisa, any sign of the fleet?" he asked. "Sensors are picking up jump signatures," Lisa said. Her voice was excited. "Multiple contacts." "They're here, sir. The fleet is here." Space itself seemed to split open. One by one, human warships appeared. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers, 47 ships total, all armed and ready for war. Leading them was the dreadnought Independence. On its bridge stood Admiral Patricia Hayes. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes like steel. She had been fighting for 30 years. She knew war better than anyone. "This is Admiral Hayes to all Zarnoth vessels," Patricia said. Her voice carried across all communication channels. "You are attacking an innocent species. You are committing crimes against thinking beings. You have one chance to leave this system. If you stay, we will destroy you. Choose now." Commander Zethrak looked at the human fleet on his display. 47 ships. All of them built heavy armored, designed for war. These humans were serious, but he could not show weakness. The Dominion did not retreat. "All ships engage the human fleet," Zethrak ordered. "Destroy them all." It was the last order he ever gave. The Independence's main gun fired. It was a magnetic accelerator, the same principle as the Valiant's railguns, but much, much larger. The tungsten rod it fired was the size of a car. When it hit the Zarnoth flagship's shields, they simply ceased to exist. The second shot went through the armor like it was paper. The flagship exploded, taking Commander Zethrak and 400 crew members with it. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Hayes said calmly. "Let's clean up this mess. The human fleet attacked." Part 3, the battle for Kelrath Prime, turned into a massacre. Not of humans, but of the Zarnoth who had thought themselves invincible. The human fleet moved like it had been born to fight together. Destroyers and frigates darted between the larger Zarnoth vessels, fast and deadly. They targeted engines and weapon systems with perfect accuracy. Cruisers fired their missiles in coordinated patterns, overwhelming enemy defenses. Battleships stood like walls of metal and fire, their heavy guns tearing through Zarnoth armor. On the Valiant, Jake watched the battle with grim satisfaction. His ship had fought alone for nearly 40 minutes. Now they were part of something larger, something unstoppable. "Captain, Admiral Hayes is hailing us," Lisa said. Patricia's face appeared on the screen. She looked at Jake with approval in her eyes. "Good work holding them off, Captain Morrison," she said. "You and your crew showed real courage today." "Just doing our job, Admiral," Jake replied. "Well, your job now is to help us free those Kelrath down there," Patricia said. "I'm seeing transport ships trying to leave the planet. Those ships are full of captured civilians. I want you to stop them. Board them if you have to, but don't let a single Kelrath get taken from this system." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. "We won't let them down." The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. They were tired, bruised, and some were bleeding from minor injuries, but every single one of them was smiling. "Ryan, find me those transport ships," Jake ordered. "Already on it, sir," Ryan said. "I count 18 transports heading for the jump point. They're not armed, but they're fast. Danny, intercept course. Lisa, hail them. Tell them to stop their engines and prepare to be boarded." The Valiant changed direction, racing after the fleeing transports. The Zarnoth crews on those ships were panicking. They had expected an easy raid on a defenseless world. Instead, they had run into Deathworlders who fought like demons. 3 transports tried to run. The Valiant fired warning shots across their paths. When that did not work, Ryan targeted their engines with the railguns. Precise shots, just enough to disable them without destroying the ships. The transport stopped, dead in space. "Marines, you're up," Jake said over the intercom. "Board those ships and secure the Kelrath. Non-lethal force if possible, but protect those civilians at all costs." In the hangar bay, Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez led his team of 20 Marines. They wore heavy armor and carried advanced rifles. These were not regular soldiers. These were humans trained to fight in every environment against any enemy. "You heard the captain," Carlos said to his team. "We're going in. The Zarnoth might try to fight. They might try to use the Kelrath as shields. We don't care. We get those people out safely. Any questions?" Nobody had questions. Marines did not question when innocent lives were at stake. The boarding shuttles launched from the Valiant. They crossed the gap between ships in seconds, locking onto the transport hulls with magnetic clamps. Cutting torches went to work, burning through the outer doors. Carlos was the first one through. His helmet display showed the layout of the transport. Ahead were cargo holds. That was where the Kelrath would be. The corridor was narrow and dark, perfect for an ambush. Carlos moved forward carefully, his rifle up and ready. A Zarnoth soldier appeared from a side room holding a weapon. Carlos fired first. His rifle shot out an electric pulse that hit the soldier, dropping him to the ground unconscious. The Zarnoth were not prepared for humans who could see in the dark, who moved faster than seemed possible. "Cargo hold ahead," Carlos said to his team. "Breach and clear." They put explosives on the cargo hold door. The explosion was small but powerful. The door blew inward. Carlos and his team rushed through. Inside were hundreds of Kelrath. They were small beings, only about a meter tall, with soft fur and large eyes. They looked terrified. Some were crying. Children clung to their parents. 3 Zarnoth guards stood among them, holding weapons pointed at the civilians. "Drop your weapons," Carlos ordered in Galactic Common. "You have 3 seconds." The Zarnoth hesitated. They were trying to decide if they should fight or surrender. Carlos shot the weapon out of the first guard's hand. The electric pulse was so precise it hit only the weapon, leaving the guard unharmed but very scared. The other 2 guards dropped their weapons immediately. "Smart choice," Carlos said. He turned to the Kelrath. "You're safe now. We're from Earth. We're here to help you." An elderly Kelrath stepped forward. He had white fur and kind eyes. This was Elder Merenth, the one who had sent the distress call. "You came," Merenth said. His voice was full of wonder. We sent our message into the void, hoping someone would hear. And you came. We heard, Carlos said gently. And we're getting you out of here. The Marines worked quickly. They moved the Kelrath to the boarding shuttles, families staying together. The children stopped crying when they saw the human soldiers being so careful with them. One little Kelrath girl even smiled at Carlos and touched his armored hand. Back in space, the main battle was ending. Of the 68 Zarnoth ships that had attacked Kelrath Prime, only 12 managed to escape. The rest were either destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost only 2 ships, with several others damaged. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Independence, looking at the reports. Her fleet had won a complete victory. But she knew this was just the beginning. Communications. Send a message to Fleet Command on Earth, she ordered. Tell them we have engaged and defeated a Zarnoth battle group. Tell them the Zarnoth will consider this an act of war, and tell them to prepare for retaliation. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Sam Brooks, hesitated. Admiral, Earth is going to ask if this was worth it. If saving one species was worth starting a war with an empire. Patricia looked at him with hard eyes. What do you think, Lieutenant? Sam thought about the reports he had read. The Kelrath were peaceful. They had never hurt anyone. They had been attacked simply because they were weak. I think it was worth it, ma'am, Sam said. Then that's what you tell them, Patricia said. And tell them one more thing. Tell them humanity does not abandon those who call for help. If the Zarnoth want war, they can have war, but they're going to learn why you don't attack the defenseless when Deathworlders are watching. The message was sent. It would take days to reach Earth, traveling through the communication relays, but the response was never in doubt. Humanity had made its choice. Down on Kelrath Prime, the remaining Kelrath came out of hiding. They saw the human ships in orbit, saw their people being returned from the captured transports. They saw that the Zarnoth were gone, driven away by beings who had come from across the stars to help them. Elder Maranth stood in the ruins of his city. Buildings were burned, streets were damaged, but his people were alive. His children were safe. A human shuttle landed nearby. Captain Jake Morrison stepped out. He walked over to where Maranth stood. Elder Maranth, Jake said. I'm Captain Morrison of the Earthship Valiant. We received your distress call. Maranth looked up at this tall human. He saw the tiredness in Jake's eyes, the way he favored his left side where he had been injured in the battle. This human had risked everything to answer a call from strangers. Why? Maranth asked simply. Why did you come? You did not know us. We have nothing to offer you. Why risk your lives? Jake smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Because you needed help. That's enough. Where we come from, we have a saying. We judge a society not by how it treats its powerful, but by how it protects its weak. You needed protection. So we came. Maranth felt tears in his large eyes. We will never forget this. The Kelrath will remember that humanity came when no one else would. Just get your people somewhere safe, Jake said. The Zarnoth might come back. And when they do, they'll bring more ships. Will you stay? Maranth asked. Will you protect us? Jake looked up at the sky where the human fleet orbited. We'll stay as long as we can. And if we have to leave, we'll make sure you have what you need to defend yourselves. You have our word. That night, the Kelrath built fires in the city square. They sang songs of thanks, their voices rising into the air. In orbit, human crews rested and repaired their ships, knowing that what came next would be even harder. The Zarnoth Empire had been humiliated, and empires never forget humiliation. War was coming. Real war. Total war. But humanity was ready. Part 4. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kelrath Prime, the Zarnoth Empire struck back. Lieutenant Amy Torres sat at her station on Guardian 7, one of the orbital defense platforms around the human colony world of New Boston. She was bored. Guard duty was always boring. She watched sensor screens that showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the sensors went crazy. Oh no, Amy whispered. No, no, no. Her hands flew across her console. She checked the readings 3 times, hoping she was wrong. but the numbers did not change. Guardian 7 to Fleet Command, Amy said into her microphone. Her voice shook. I have multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. Counting contacts now, 50, 100. Still counting. 200. 300. They're still coming. Sir, I'm reading 412 Zarnoth warships entering the system. At Fleet Headquarters on the surface of New Boston, alarms started blaring. Officers ran through corridors. Admiral Patricia Hayes was pulled from a meeting and rushed to the operations center. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a nightmare. The Zarnoth fleet was massive. More ships than Patricia had ever seen in one place. They were arranged in perfect formation, moving toward New Boston like a tidal wave. Get me every available ship, Patricia ordered. I want every captain, every crew member, everyone who can fight in space. Do it now. Her staff worked frantically. Messages went out to all human vessels in the sector, but most of the fleet was scattered across dozens of systems protecting colonies and trade routes. We have 93 ships in system, her tactical officer reported. Another 20 can be here in 6 hours. 60 more in 12 hours. Patricia did the math in her head. Even with reinforcements, they would be outnumbered 5 to 1. Those were terrible odds, but there was no choice. 3 million humans lived on New Boston. They could not evacuate in time. The fleet had to hold. All ships formed defensive line around the planet, Patricia commanded. And someone get me Admiral Jack Stevens? Tell him we need the first fleet here as fast as they can possibly move. On the Zarnoth flagship Annihilator, Supreme Admiral Corvin watched the human fleet scrambling to defend their world. He smiled. He had studied the battle recordings from Kelrath Prime very carefully. He had seen how these humans fought. They were aggressive, creative, and brave, but bravery meant nothing against overwhelming numbers. All ships maintain formation, Corvin ordered. We advance slowly. Make them come to us. Let them exhaust themselves against our shields. Then we crush them. Corvin had conquered 20 systems for the Dominion. He was old, experienced, and very smart. He would not make the same mistakes that Commander Zethrak had made. The two fleets came together like storm clouds colliding. Captain Carl Wright commanded the dreadnought Fortress. He was a big man with a scarred face and hands that had seen a lifetime of hard work. He had grown up on a farm on Earth, joined the military at 18, and worked his way up through pure skill and determination. Listen up, Carl said to his crew over the intercom. I'm not going to lie to you. We're badly outnumbered. The Zarnoth have more ships, bigger guns, and they're out for revenge. A lot of us probably won't survive this battle. He paused, letting that sink in. But down there on that planet are 3 million people. Our people. Your families. Your friends. Your children. And those people are counting on us to protect them. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stand our ground. We're going to fight with everything we have. And we're going to show these Zarnoth bastards what happens when you threaten a human world. Are you with me? The response was a roar of approval from every deck of the ship. The battle began with a wall of fire. The Zarnoth launched thousands of missiles, so many they looked like a swarm of insects. The human point defense systems fired desperately, shooting down hundreds of them, but hundreds more got through. 3 human destroyers disappeared in the first minute of combat. Torn apart by the explosions, all ships, fall back to the orbital platforms, Patricia ordered from her command ship. Use them as cover. Focus fire on their lead elements. The human fleet retreated in good order, moving behind the massive orbital defense platforms. These were huge structures built over years, covered with armor and weapons. They were designed for exactly this situation. The platforms opened fire. Their main guns were even larger than those on the dreadnoughts. Each shot could destroy a cruiser in one hit. The Zarnoth advance slowed as ships started exploding, but Corvin had planned for this. He sent his ships in waves. The first wave took the heavy fire, absorbing the damage. While the platforms were focused on them, the second wave moved to flank. Enemy ships moving around our left flank, the tactical officer reported. 20 cruisers and 40 destroyers. Patricia made a quick decision. Carrier Group 3, intercept them. Launch all fighters. The carrier Defiant broke formation with its escorts. Its hangar bays opened, releasing hundreds of small fighter craft. Each fighter carried a single pilot and enough weapons to threaten ships 100 times their size. Lieutenant Commander Greg Palmer led his squadron. He was young, only 28, but he had been flying since he could reach the controls. His call sign was Viper, and he had painted a snake on the side of his fighter. Viper lead to all fighters. Greg said over the radio. "We've got incoming cruisers. Stay in pairs, watch each other's backs, and don't try to be a hero. Work together." The fighters swarmed the Zarnoth ships like angry bees. The Zarnoth had fighters too, but their pilots were not as well trained. More importantly, they did not have the same reflexes as humans. Greg dove under a Zarnoth cruiser, firing his missiles at its engines. The missiles hit and the cruiser lost power. It started drifting, unable to maneuver. "Good kill, Viper Lead," his wingman called out, but there were too many enemies. For every Zarnoth ship they damaged, 2 more took its place. Greg's squadron was taking losses. He saw fighters explode on his radar, each one a person he knew, a friend. "Stay focused," Greg ordered. "We just need to slow them down." The battle raged for hours. The space around New Boston became a graveyard of ships and debris. The human fleet was down to 67 vessels. The Zarnoth had lost over 100 ships, but they kept coming. On the surface of New Boston, people watched the battle in the sky. Some prayed. Some cried. Parents held their children. Everyone knew that if the fleet failed, the Zarnoth would land, and then everyone would die or be taken as slaves. Mayor Helen Price stood in the city's command center, coordinating evacuations of the outer settlements. But there was nowhere to run. The next habitable world was months away by transport ship. "How much longer can they hold?" she asked the military liaison. The officer checked his displays. "Maybe another hour. 2 if we're lucky." Helen felt her heart sink. Then a young technician shouted from across the room. "Ma'am, I'm picking up new jump signatures. Big ones, a lot of them." On the fortress, Carl watched his tactical display. The ship had taken heavy damage. Hull breaches on multiple decks. 2 of the main guns offline. Shield generators running on backup power. But they were still fighting. Then space itself seemed to tear open behind the Zarnoth fleet. 230 human warships appeared in perfect formation. At their head was the massive super dreadnought Judgment, flagship of the First Fleet. Admiral Jack Stevens stood on its bridge. He was older than Patricia, with white hair and eyes like ice. He had been fighting longer than most of his crew had been alive. "All ships, this is Admiral Stevens," he said calmly. "The Second Fleet has been holding the line for hours. They're tired. They're hurt. But they didn't break. Now it's our turn. Attack pattern Omega. Show these invaders what happens when you attack Earth's children." The First Fleet opened fire, fresh, fully armed, and absolutely furious at seeing the Second Fleet so battered. They hit the Zarnoth from behind with devastating force. Corvin realized immediately that he had lost. His fleet was caught between 2 enemy forces, his ships taking fire from both sides. He tried to reorganize to form a fighting retreat, but humans did not accept retreats. They pressed harder. The battle turned into a slaughter. Zarnoth ships exploded by the dozens. Those that tried to flee were hunted down. Those that tried to surrender were taken prisoner. When the guns finally fell silent, only 43 Zarnoth ships had escaped. The rest were gone. New Boston was saved. In the city square, people cheered and cried with relief. In orbit, exhausted human crews allowed themselves to celebrate. But on Earth, in the government chambers, leaders faced a hard truth. The Zarnoth would not stop. This was not just a battle anymore. This was war, total war, and it would only end when one side was completely destroyed. Part 5, the war between humanity and the Zarnoth Dominion, raged for 11 months. It was brutal, it was bloody, and it changed the entire galaxy forever. 30 human colonies were attacked and burned. Millions died. Cities that had taken generations to build were reduced to rubble in hours. The Zarnoth threw everything they had at humanity, trying to crush the upstart species that dared to challenge an empire. But humans were not easy to kill. Every colony that fell took dozens of Zarnoth ships with it. Human defenders fought with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. They used tactics no one had seen before. They adapted to every situation. They never ever gave up. And slowly, month by month, humanity started winning. Admiral Patricia Hayes had been promoted to Supreme Commander of all human military forces. She sat in the war room on Earth, surrounded by displays showing the current state of the war. Her hair had more gray in it now. Her face had more lines. War aged people quickly. "Show me the strategic map," she said. A massive holographic display appeared. It showed dozens of star systems in different colors. Blue for human-controlled, red for Zarnoth-controlled, gray for contested. General Larry Matthews, head of the ground forces, pointed to several red systems. We've taken 40 Zarnoth systems in the last 3 months. Their economy is starting to collapse. They can't replace ships as fast as we destroy them. What about their fleet strength? Patricia asked. Down to about 700 ships total, another officer reported, but 300 of those are defending their home system, Zarnoth Prime. Patricia studied the map. The Zarnoth home system was deep in their territory. It had never been attacked in 5,000 years of Dominion history. The planet was protected by massive orbital fortresses, minefields, and the largest concentration of warships in the sector. It would be the hardest battle humanity had ever fought. If we strike at their capital, we end this war, Larry said. Cut off the head and the body dies. Or we lose our entire fleet trying, another general argued. Those defenses are no joke. Patricia listened to them debate. She thought about all the human colonies that had been destroyed, all the people who had died, all the families torn apart. This war had to end. Assemble the Grand Fleet, Patricia ordered. Every ship we can spare. We're going to Zarnoth Prime. We're going to end this. It took 3 weeks to gather the fleet. Ships came from every corner of human space, battle-scarred veterans and brand-new vessels fresh from the shipyards. When they all gathered at the rally point, the fleet numbered 712 warships. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Retribution. He had been promoted to Commodore after Kelrath Prime. Now he commanded a battle group of 20 ships. Around him were veterans who had fought in a dozen battles. They were tired, they were scarred, but they were ready. All battle group commanders report status. Patricia's voice came over the communication channel. One by one, the commanders checked in. Every ship was ready. Every crew was prepared. This is it, Patricia said. We're going to jump into the Zarnoth home system. We're going to face their strongest defenses and their best ships. Some of us won't come back. But we're doing this for every human who has died in this war. For every child who lost a parent. For every family torn apart. We're doing this so that no one else has to suffer. All ships jump in 3, 2, 1. 712 ships jumped as one. They appeared in the Zarnoth system in perfect formation. The sight before them was overwhelming. The planet Zarnoth Prime hung in space, a brown and red world surrounded by artificial rings and stations. Around it were 300 warships and 8 massive orbital fortresses. Each fortress was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that could destroy a fleet. On the planet's surface, Supreme Emperor Thelmar watched the sky fill with human ships. He was old, ancient by Zarnoth standards. He had ruled the Dominion for 60 years. He had conquered dozens of species. He had never known defeat. But looking at that fleet, he felt something he had never experienced before. He felt fear. All forces engage the humans, he ordered. Destroy them all, show them the power of the Dominion. The orbital fortresses opened fire first. Beams of energy as thick as buildings lanced out, hitting the human fleet. 2 destroyers exploded immediately. A cruiser lost half its hull and started spinning out of control. All Titan-class ships target those fortresses, Patricia ordered from her flagship, the Super Dreadnought Indomitable. Carrier groups, launch all fighters. Main fleet, advance and engage their ships. The Titan-class dreadnoughts were the largest ships humanity had ever built. Each one was 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a continent. There were 8 of them in the fleet. They moved forward, their shields absorbing hits that would have destroyed any other vessel. Their main guns charged, gathering enormous amounts of energy. Then they fired. 8 beams of concentrated energy hit the nearest orbital fortress. Its shields held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The armor beneath started to melt. Then the fortress exploded, torn apart from the inside. First fortress down, the tactical officer reported. 7 to go. The Zarnoth fleet charged forward to meet the humans. It became a massive brawl in space, hundreds of ships fighting at close range. Missiles and energy beams filled the void. Ships on both sides exploded and burned, Jake's battle group moved to flank the Zarnoth formation. All ships concentrate fire on their cruisers. Take out their medium units first. His ships worked together perfectly. They had trained for this. They had fought together for months. They knew each other's movements like a dance. A Zarnoth cruiser tried to target the Retribution. Before it could fire, 3 other human ships hit it from different angles. The cruiser's shields failed and it broke apart. But the Zarnoth were fighting for their home. They fought with desperate courage. A Zarnoth destroyer, its engines destroyed, rammed itself into a human battleship. Both ships exploded in a massive fireball. In the fighter battles, Greg Palmer led his squadron against waves of Zarnoth interceptors. The enemy pilots had gotten better. They had learned from fighting humans, but they still were not good enough. "Break right, Viper 3, Greg called out, seeing an enemy on his wingman's tail. He rolled his fighter and fired, hitting the Zarnoth fighter with precise shots. It exploded. "Thanks, Viper Lead," his wingman said. "Stay tight," Greg ordered. "We've got another wave incoming." The battle raged for 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. Crews worked in shifts, grabbing sleep when they could, eating at their stations. The fighting never stopped. Slowly, human forces destroyed the orbital fortresses. One by one they fell, their massive structures breaking apart and falling toward the planet below. The Zarnoth fleet fought bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. Human ships were tougher, human crews were better trained, and human tactics were superior. Ship by ship, the Zarnoth fleet was destroyed. On the 4th day, the last Zarnoth warship surrendered. The orbital defenses were gone. The fleet was destroyed. Zarnoth Prime stood defenseless. Patricia stood on the bridge of the Indomitable looking down at the enemy homeworld. She could order the planet bombarded. She could destroy their cities, kill millions in revenge for what they had done to human colonies. But that was not who humans were. They fought to protect, not to destroy. "Prepare landing forces," Patricia ordered. "We're going down to accept their surrender, and send a message to Emperor Thelmar. Tell him this war is over." Part 6. The throne room of Supreme Emperor Thelmar was a massive hall of dark stone and metal. For 5,000 years, emperors had sat on the throne at its center, ruling over an empire of 100 worlds. Conquered species had knelt before that throne, begging for mercy that never came. Now, for the first time in history, the throne room's doors were opening for invaders. Admiral Patricia Hayes walked through those doors, flanked by 20 human marines in full armor. Her boots echoed on the stone floor. She wore her formal uniform, decorated with medals earned in a lifetime of service. Behind her walked Jake Morrison, General Larry Matthews, and a dozen other senior officers. Emperor Thelmar sat on his throne, trying to maintain dignity even in defeat. He was tall for a Zarnoth, with dark skin covered in ritual scars that marked his rank. His eyes were yellow and cold. Around him stood his advisors and guards, all unarmed as the humans had demanded. Patricia stopped 10 meters from the throne. She did not bow. She did not show any sign of deference. "Supreme Emperor Thelmar," she said. Her voice echoed in the huge chamber. "The Zarnoth Dominion has been defeated. Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are gone. You have no more options. I am here to accept your surrender." Thelmar's hands gripped the arms of his throne. Every instinct told him to refuse, to fight to the last. But he had watched his empire burn. He had seen his fleets destroyed. These humans had done in 11 months what no species had done in 5,000 years. They had beaten the Dominion completely. "What are your terms?" Thelmar asked. His voice was bitter. Patricia pulled out a data tablet. "First, you will surrender unconditionally. All Zarnoth military forces will stand down immediately. Second, your military will be disbanded. You will be allowed a small defense force to protect against pirates and raiders, but nothing more. Third, every slave camp in your territory will be opened. Every enslaved being will be freed immediately. Fourth, you will pay reparations to every species you have wronged. The exact amounts will be determined by an independent council. And fifth, you will stand trial for crimes against intelligent life. You and every Dominion official who ordered or participated in the enslavement and murder of other species." The throne room was silent. Thelmar's advisors looked at each other in shock. These terms meant the end of everything the Dominion had been. "And if I refuse?" Thelmar asked. Patricia's expression did not change. "Then we will remove you by force." We will hunt down every Dominion official. We will occupy every Zarnoth world. And we will make sure that the Dominion never rises again. The choice is yours. Surrender with dignity or be destroyed completely. Thelmar looked at this human woman. She was small compared to a Zarnoth, physically weak, but her eyes held absolute certainty. She meant every word she said. He thought about the battle recordings he had watched. Human ships fighting against impossible odds. Human soldiers charging into enemy fire to protect civilians. Human pilots sacrificing themselves to save their wingmen. These Deathworlders did not fight like any species he had ever known. They did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for each other, for justice, for those too weak to defend themselves. The Dominion had built itself on the belief that might made right, that the strong deserved to rule the weak. But these humans had proven something different. They had shown that strength meant nothing without honor. Power meant nothing without compassion. Slowly, Emperor Thelmar stood from his throne. He walked down the steps and knelt before Patricia Hayes. "I surrender," he said quietly. "The Zarnoth Dominion surrenders to humanity." Patricia nodded. "Marines, take him into custody. Treat him with respect, but keep him secure." 2 Marines stepped forward and helped Thelmar to his feet. They led him away gently but firmly. The Emperor, who had ruled an empire, was now just a prisoner waiting for trial. The work of rebuilding began immediately. Human forces spread across the former Dominion territory. They opened the slave camps and freed millions of beings. Some had been enslaved for generations. They cried when they saw human soldiers breaking their chains. Jake Morrison led a team to a slave processing center on a moon orbiting Zarnoth Prime. The facility was enormous, designed to hold tens of thousands of beings. Inside, they found 23 different species, all taken from their homes and forced to work in terrible conditions. "Everyone out," Jake ordered. "You're free. No one will hurt you anymore." At first, the former slaves did not believe it. They had learned not to trust promises. But the humans showed them the destroyed Zarnoth fleet in orbit. They showed them recordings of Emperor Thelmar's surrender. Slowly, the former slaves began to understand. The nightmare was over. Among them was a young Kelrath female named Shania. She had been taken in the raid on Kelrath Prime, separated from her family and brought to this terrible place. When she saw Jake, she recognized the human uniform. "You came back," Shania said, tears running down her furry face. "Elder Maranth said you would. He said humans keep their promises." Jake knelt down to her level. "What's your name?" "Shania," she said quietly. "Well, Shania, we're going to take you home. We're going to find your family, and no one is ever going to take you away again." Shania hugged Jake, and he held her gently. This was why humans fought. Not for territory or power. For moments like this. For children who could go home to their families. 3 months after the surrender, the Galactic Council convened for the first time since the war began. The council chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives from 300 species. Most had stayed neutral during the war, too afraid to choose sides. The Kelrath delegate, Elder Maranth himself, stood to speak. "For thousands of years, the Zarnoth Dominion terrorized this sector," Maranth said. His voice was old but strong. "They enslaved entire species. They destroyed civilizations, and the Galactic Council did nothing. We wrote documents. We issued warnings, but we did not act." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Then my people sent a distress call. We were being attacked, our children taken, our cities burning. We called into the void, hoping someone would answer. And the humans came. 1 ship at first, then a fleet, then an entire military force. They fought for us even though we had nothing to offer them. They risked everything to free slaves they had never met. And they did not stop until every slave camp was empty and the Dominion fell." Maranth turned to where the human delegation sat. Patricia Hayes sat among them, along with Jake Morrison, General Larry Matthews, and other representatives from Earth. "The Galactic Council has a choice now," Maranth continued. "We can continue to be a council that talks but never acts. Or we can learn from humanity. We can stand up for the weak. We can defend the defenseless. We can be worthy of the civilization we claim to represent." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates agreed. Others worried about the implications. Change was always difficult. But in the end, the council voted to reform. They created an actual defense force to protect member species. They established courts to try those who committed crimes against other species. They built a new system based on justice rather than fear, and Earth was given a permanent seat on the council. Humanity had earned its place among the galactic community. Back on Earth, in a small ceremony, the government held a memorial for all those lost in the war. Thousands of names were read aloud. Soldiers who died in battle, civilians killed in raids, people from every colony and every walk of life. Jake Morrison attended the ceremony. He thought about all the people he had served with. Lisa Grant, killed when her ship was destroyed defending New Boston. Ryan Foster, who had died boarding a Zarnoth carrier. Danny Cooper, who had flown his damaged fighter into an enemy dreadnought to save his carrier. So many others. After the ceremony, a young boy approached Jake. He was maybe 10 years old, with his father's hand on his shoulder. "Sir," the boy said nervously, "my mom was on the destroyer Vigilant. She died at the Battle of New Boston." Jake remembered the Vigilant. It had been one of the first ships destroyed in that battle. "What was her name?" Jake asked gently. "Lieutenant Susan Parker," the boy said. "She was a communications officer." Jake nodded. "I'm sure she was very brave." "Dad says she died protecting us," the boy continued. "Protecting Earth, is that true?" Jake looked at the boy's father, who nodded slightly. "Yes," Jake said. "Your mother and thousands of others gave everything to protect humanity. To protect people they would never meet. To make sure that children like you could grow up safe and free. That's what it means to serve." The boy stood straighter. "When I grow up, I want to be like her." "I want to protect people too," Jake smiled. "I think your mother would be very proud of that." As Jake walked away, he thought about the future. The war was over, but there would be new challenges. The galaxy was a big place, full of dangers and mysteries. There would be more species that needed help. More fights against injustice. But humanity had proven something important. They had shown that coming from a death world did not mean being cruel or violent. It meant being strong enough to protect the weak, tough enough to fight for what was right, brave enough to answer the call when someone needed help. Somewhere out in the galaxy, on a peaceful world called Kelreth Prime, Elder Marinth stood under the stars. His cities were being rebuilt. His people were healing. Children played in the streets again. Their laughter,